Hello and welcome to Lutherans Alive. We believe that God is doing wonderful things through us, and so this is the program that seeks to tell the stories of Lutheran Christians and their ministries here in Southwestern Pennsylvania. I'm Pastor Tony Schneck, pleased to be your host today, and we are talking on the program today with Marsha Davis. Marsha is a member of Zion Lutheran Church in Harmony. She also happens to serve on our Synod's Global Mission Committee and has been actively involved in global mission and has some stories today about a few of her journeys. Marsha, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
We're glad to have you. And which of your travels would you like to talk about first today?
I think I'd like to talk about Camp Noah because it was the first mission that I did personally, and it was one of the first things that the Synod has done for the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And we served in DeLisle, Mississippi in July of 2006, which was almost a year after Hurricane Katrina hit. And DeLisle was a town that wasn't supposed to have been affected because they were so far inland. And if you remember, Pass Christian was hit very hard, and it's close to Pass Christian, but much farther inland. So the people were not expecting to get hit. They weren't prepared in any way, shape, or form. And the church that hosted the Camp Noah for 4 weeks was very badly damaged. In fact, they had Bibles and hymnals that were laying over the rafters on the ceiling. They put their church back together. They had the paint was still probably wet on the walls. No plumbing, had porta-johns out there for everyone to use, and they opened their doors to 4 weeks of Camp Noah. And it was a wonderful experience. We normally go into Camp Noah a year after a disaster because that's when the children are most receptive to help. We don't go in as counselors. We don't go in any form of professional capacity. We just simply go in to help those kids have a week of fun, be able to deal with their problems, be able to process some of the things that have happened to them. And it truly is a week where you can see from Monday to Friday the difference that it's made for these kids.
What sorts of things do you do with the children, and what ages are they?
It's kindergarten through 6. Well, some take kindergarten, some don't, but basically kindergarten through 6. And many times there's a before and after care, so parents who work have somewhere to leave their child so that they can attend camp. And it's run exactly as a Bible school would be run, but it's all day. And we have our recreation, we have our arts and crafts, we have snacks and lunch. The one thing that we do to try to help the kids a little bit is to journal with them. And we start out day 1, beginning the story of Noah, and carry it, of course, day by day through until the end when the promise is made by God. And some of the children have never been to church, and some of them have. And the ones who have not been to church, it is just a revelation to them. I had one child, I did a trip to Ramona, California, to deal with children that were involved in the wildfires, which was a unique experience. And the one girl, we sing a song that we spell out Christian, and she came back to class and she said, what is a Christian? So there are children who are just at the very beginning of some sort of, we hope, Christian life after this camp is over. But it's a full day, and Thursday we have water day where everyone gets as wet as they can possibly get, and we have our final program on Thursday evening. I'd like to tell a story about the one little boy from DeLisle. His name was Christopher, and he was extremely shy, and he had some sort of a speech problem. So it was difficult to understand him. And at that camp, we journaled with them, just maybe one-on-one or two-on-one, and Christopher was in my group. And he was very hesitant to share anything. You had to really pull things out of him. And I worked in recreation on that trip also. And he never wanted to participate in anything when the other kids were counting on him, like in a relay or something. He wouldn't do those kinds of things, but he would do individual things. So when the week was all done, his mother came in with a babe in arms to collect all of his crafts that he had done, and I said, here, let me help you out. And Christopher got in the truck, and he turned around and said as clear and loudly as can be, Tell everyone thank you from Christopher. And his mother said, this has been the most wonderful experience for him. I think I'm going to start taking him to Sunday school. So that was a success story that we all share, even to this day, that Camp Noah does make a difference.
Wonderful. And specifically, the Camp Noah programs are geared for those places, those communities, where there has been a very significant disaster of some sort, a very unfortunate event or something that has happened, and it's meant to let the kids have some fun in the midst of that, and also an opportunity to witness, an opportunity to share the message with them. Other places where Camp Noah has been established?
Camp Noah is run by Lutheran Social Services out of Minnesota, and they go all over the country. And of course, when Katrina hit, that just made it blossom. And it was funded by Christian organizations and churches, and unfortunately, as time goes by, those kinds of things are forgotten because there's a newer and bigger disaster that comes along. And so Camp Noah is currently being funded somewhat by the government, which means that it has to be a little more secular. And so we are trying to maybe create something in our own area where we can take it back to where it's supposed to be and take it to the people in our own areas who have been devastated by floods and different disasters over the last couple of years. But Camp Noah does go all over the country, and when I went to California, it was a national team. We came from all over and joined together and went out and did that one.
When the money comes from the government, it's in some ways it's a mixed blessing, because we're thankful for the financial resources, but at the same time, there's that distinction we keep between church and state that we have to be mindful of, but the message is important too. And it sounds as if there have been children who have heard the message and have taken it to heart, and it has made a difference in their lives.
It has, most definitely. I recently received a letter from a young lady who had been at that first camp in DeLille. She had taken a particular liking to me and the other woman, and we had given her our address, and we had corresponded for a short while after we got back, and she found my address in her drawer, and she started to write me, and we've been corresponding ever since. I'd like to get her up here this summer, if I could, to do a week-long mission with us, with Mission on the Mon, so we'll see how that turns out.
That'd be great.
Yes.
You've spoken about the Gulf Coast and California. Other places where you personally have traveled as a part of Camp Noah?
I've been to Biloxi, which is not too far from DeLille. I've been to California, and we went to Iowa City, Iowa. Last year we were supposed to go to Wisconsin, but that trip unfortunately was canceled a week before we were due to leave because of funding. So that never happened. And I called this year to see what opportunities there were, and they're still struggling. They're still struggling financially. So that's where they stand right now. It's just trying to get the funding to hold these camps, and we know what's going on around this country, and it's really a needed program, and I would like to keep it in a Christian way. So we'll see how that goes.
As you say, it seems as if no sooner do we get through one disaster or difficult situation than another arises. So there's always a need.
Always.
Marsha, thank you, and we're going to talk more after we take just a short break, and we'll hear more about mission here in our own country and abroad when we return on Lutherans Alive.
All right, thank you.
Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. We're here with Marsha Davis, who's been very involved in global mission. We've spoken about the Camp Noah program, geared for children here on our own shores here in the United States, but now you've also traveled elsewhere. Can you tell us about your trip to Madagascar?
Yes, I'd love to tell that trip. I always like to relive it. In July of 2008, a group of 5 people traveled to Madagascar with Jim and Joanne Vegan, who served as missionaries there for, I believe, 14 years, and they went as our guides and interpreters. And we went strictly to visit. And at first I was concerned about, we're not doing a health issue, we're not doing anything like that. But after having done it, just being there is wonderful for them. Knowing that we went and we cared enough to be there for them, no matter what we did while we were there, was great. And we traveled many, many miles through the country. We went to Antananarivo, which is the capital, and visited with President Modeste, who is the president of the whole Lutheran Church in Madagascar. It would be like Bishop Hansen. And his mother had just passed away, and so we had a very short period of time with him. And went to visit SALFA, which is the medical organization that's there, and visited their supply areas that were empty. One of the things that we would like to see happen is that they have all of the necessary medications for everyone. We traveled from Antananarivo down to Tuliar, which is about 700 miles, in a van that broke down 4 different times. Once at twilight in the mountains. we were very nervous and very silly because, here we were stuck. We always got out of our situations. Some good Samaritan always came along and helped us out and got us where we needed to go. And it was an awesome trip to see the whole countryside of Madagascar. It's a beautiful, beautiful country, but of course with much poverty. And one of the things that impressed us was the fact that the people who do own land, and that is because that's been in their families for generations. They didn't just go to the real estate broker and buy a parcel of land. And they have their rice paddies, and then they have their crops terraced up these hills, and the earth is all red and clay-like, and they have dug those terraces out by hand with a homemade shovel. I mean, it's just awesome to see that kind of thing can happen. And when I try to explain that to groups or kids when I came back, it was hard for them to realize that kind of thing happens. They make their own bricks. They have made kilns on the side of the road, and you'll see the young people, 7, 8, 9 years old, with maybe a baby brother or sister on their back and a stack of bricks on their head, walking them up to the kiln. It's just amazing to see. We did get to Tuliar and met with President Tribunzi, who is the Tuliar bishop or president, and had a lot of time with him. We talked about the tubies, which I found very fascinating because they are the places where you take the people that might have some psychological problems, alcoholics, homeless, and they go to a tubie, and they are treated by shepherdesses, which are mostly women, but there are men, and they're all dressed in white, and they do a laying on of the hands, which we were supposed to witness, but because of wind, we were not able to do it because I had to do it outside, and the wind was pretty intense that day. But while we were there at the tubie, we looked over, and there were a group of Malagasy boys in Boy Scout uniforms. So it's just such a diverse thing. You see so many different things, and then you see something that looks very normal. But again, that trip was wonderful, and they were just so delighted that we were there. So very delighted to have us come and know that we care.
How did you find the church there in Madagascar in terms of their worship life?
I thought that I was going to a little village hut where people came, in their native garb to worship. And the cathedral in Tuliar is very large, very nice, very fairly modern. And on a good Sunday, in the middle of summer, they might worship 3,000 people between 2 services. So they are thriving. There is no worry. Now, in their eyes, they're worried about how they're going to lose their children as they get older, the same way we are worried about how we're losing our children from going to church. But they are just doing wonderful. They are doing wonderful, and they entertained us, and they sang to us, and they fed us everywhere we went, and just with such great hospitality that it was amazing.
The numbers are growing on the continent of Africa. The church is thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Would you care to share some things? Are these props now, are these from Madagascar?
These are all from Madagascar. There is a town that we went through that almost everything was hand-carved wood. And so I bought this salad bowl because I just can't imagine someone taking a hunk of wood and creating this bowl from it. And I did get 8 salad bowls, and every one of the bowls is a different thickness, a different size, a different height. And that, to me, is a wonderful souvenir, something that you know. And as we were leaving Tuliar to head back to Antananarivo, a woman stuck her head in the window and with these salad spoons, or whatever you want to use them for, made out of cactus wood.
Now, is that something that you use, or is that just a decoration?
Yes, I use it.
I
use it. Yes, I do use it. This was what I brought back for my church. It's a hand-carved nativity from a baobab tree, which is the tree that they say that God planted upside down because the root system spreads far and wide, and the branches are just very short little things. So this was hand-carved, and I would like to have kept it for myself, but I gave it to my church because there was only one you could purchase. Another thing that the women do is they hand weave a lot of their own silk products. I did bring my pastor back a stole, but this tablecloth, here, actually this is a baobab tree, depicts life in Madagascar. And in most all of African countries, the women do most of the work. And so it's almost all women on here, and of course women made it. So, but it's just a beautiful thing to look at and know that it's handmade. It's very difficult to tell it's handmade, and at first I would have thought, no, this is not, but you can tell when you turn it on the back that there are some things. So I just wanted to bring a couple of examples of the kind of crafts that they do, because there isn't a lot of industry. There is a small amount, and when you get into Synod, which is the capital, you can be driving on these just country roads, and then boom, you hit this town where there's stall after stall after stall of meat just hanging there in the heat to be sold. They're tolerant of it. We, of course, aren't. And then the hustle and bustle of the city. So there's just, it's an awesome experience. I truly hope to go back at some point, and hopefully for longer.
Quite an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
More adventures with Marsha Davis after we take another short break here on Lutherans Alive. Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. Thanks for being with us, and we continue to have our conversation with Marsha Davis, telling us about all her travels. Marsha is a member of Zion Lutheran Church Harmony and a part of our Synod's Global Mission Committee, and it seems as if she has traveled quite a bit. And let's move on to another place. You were speaking during the break about Senegal, another part of Africa, that great continent, and tell us about your trip there.
Well, Senegal is located in the westernmost point of Africa, and we went on this trip at the suggestion of Pastor Deb Byram, who served there as a missionary for 7 years. And there were only 3 of us besides Deb that went. And wonderful, wonderful trip again. I don't know what to say. Senegal is 95% Muslim. And out of the 5% Christians that are in the country, only 2% are Lutheran. But there are many Lutheran ministers in there. The first ministers coming into Senegal were from Finland. and they're still a very big presence there today. We saw programs that were set up by a man named Ali, who is a Muslim man. He has a center for, there's a school there, but it's for young women to learn crafts, to learn how to bake, to learn how to waitress, to learn how to be a little bit more self-sufficient. We were lucky enough to be able to go in and sit in on some of the conversations with these young girls where they're being taught abstinence. They're being taught that they do not have to accept arranged marriages. Some of them are in traditional garb and some of them are in Western clothing. It just depends on their family's point of view. But it was a Muslim man that is doing this to help the women. We had dinner at Ali's house, and Ali and the rest of us sat in the living room to eat the national dish, which is chebujen, and his wife sat in the kitchen to eat. So there's so much progress, but then when you got back into their home, it was very traditional. There are missionaries that are doing milk co-ops. The natives bring in their milk. It is pasteurized, and then they have a co-op that they sell it from. Work with AIDS patients and children. We went to the village of Hoagie, which boasts a medical health hut, where on one side is general health and the other side is a midwife, where they're trying to get the women to come in when they have their babies. And we traveled around that very traditional village with the huts and the herders and just everything that you think it looks like. Again, we shared a meal with them there. And there is a Senegalese pastor who has started a farm co-op type thing where villagers are running this. And they were villagers that formerly fought against each other, but they're coming together to work on this farm program. So as few American missionaries that are there, the people themselves, along with the missionaries, are doing wonderful things.
And the church is growing there as well?
Growing there as well, yes.
Yeah.
We went to a monastery where they sang beautiful music, and they grow different things, and then it goes to the convent on the other hill where they can it and preserve it, and so it's a combined effort there. That's a Christian endeavor there. We heard stories, we saw things. When we were in the village where Ali is running his center, there was a knock at the door one evening, and the former mayor of the town, who Pastor Byram knew when she was serving there, 2 of his wives came to visit, which is just such a strange concept for us, but to them not so much.
So whether it's on the continent of Africa or on the island of Madagascar, or whether it's here in our own country with programs like Camp Noah, there are wonderful things happening. As you've been a part of all of these travels, so to speak, and your work on the Global Mission Committee, how has this left a mark on you personally in your own faith journey, your relationship with God?
Well, it's kind of let me know that all the stereotypes that you have about different people, not anywhere, different people are people. People are kind and generous and wonderful towards one another. It's just that you don't hear about those things. You hear about all the bad things. I have just opened my heart to as many situations as I can where maybe I would have been a little bit more selfish in the past about wanting to do this. We're actually, we're doing a mission for a woman in our own church who needs some work in her house. The church is getting together and going to get her house back in shape. So it's just really made you totally aware of where you can help and what's important in your world.
Sounds like these experiences have sort of pulled you out of your comfort zone, so to speak, which we all have that. We all have that sense of comfort and security, and sometimes God calls us to venture out of that space sometimes and takes us to places where we wouldn't have dreamed to go.
I know.
And that sounds like that's been true to your experience.
It has, and I've said that God has opened so many doors for me since the first trip to Camp Noah. And now it's almost like he's shoving me through some of them. I'm thinking, no, I'm not ready for that. But I wouldn't be shoved through if I wasn't ready. So I'm ready to do whatever he wants me to do.
Well, thanks for all the good work that you have done. And I know that through what you've done, God has done wonderful things. And thanks for being on the program with us today, Marsha.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for all you've shared. And thank you for being with us today on Lutherans Alive. And we would invite you to come to worship. We know that from wherever you're watching, there is a Lutheran congregation somewhere in your neighborhood or near your neighborhood. And there's a congregation that would be very pleased to welcome you. Won't you please come worship with us? And won't you join us next time on Lutherans Alive?